Federal teams are going door to door in the town of East Palestine, Ohio, to conduct health surveys weeks after a toxic train derailment. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has also ordered all shipments of hazardous waste from the derailment to stop. All this after officials in other states complained they weren't told in advance the waste was being sent to their states for disposal. CNN's Polo Sandoval has details.
Local officials in both the state of Texas and in Michigan feeling frustrated, many of them recognizing that even though Norfolk Southern may not have been legally required to inform them that some of this hazardous material would be disposed of in their communities, they at least would have liked to have been notified by that rail company. For example, in Harris County, Texas, the chief executive there, Lena Hidalgo, saying that she first learned about 2 million gallons of water that was used to fight the fire after that February 3rd derailment, that water would be trucked to a licensed facility in her community, and she learned about that after nearly half of it was already in Harris County alone, and that she found out about it while watching the news. So that's a source of frustration. Texas Molecular, the company that was hired to dispose of this potentially dangerous water, saying that it has over 4 decades managing water safely. There's also the contaminated soil, some 4,800 cubic yards of it that the state of Ohio said would have to be removed, and were already on their way to a disposal facility in Wayne County, Michigan, until elected officials raised concerns about them not getting word from Norfolk Southern. So as a result, on Saturday, the EPA put a temporary halt to these shipments so that they can further review the disposal plan that's in place. Officials in both states saying that they have no reason to believe that the water and the soil is not being handled safely. They merely want to be informed, especially in a situation where information was very difficult to come by during the early stages of this incident. The EPA recognizing, though, that this hazardous material, it has to go somewhere to be disposed of so long as it's safely handled.
The one thing that's been made clear to me is that everyone wants this contamination gone from the community. They don't want the worry and they don't want the smell. And we owe it to the people of East Palestine to move it out of the community as quickly as possible. At the same time, I know there are folks in other states with concerns, legitimate concerns, about how this waste is being transported and how it will be disposed of. EPA will continue to work with our local, state, and federal partners to use our longstanding experience and expertise in these matters to ensure the health and safety and support the East Palestine community and to hold Norfolk Southern accountable.
The National Transportation Safety Board out with a preliminary report on Thursday, which indicated that a wheel bearing failure was the likely cause of that February 3rd incident. It derailed 38 train cars. 11 of them were carrying hazardous materials. The NTSB also adding last week that the crew was not to blame, and saying that the incident was 100% preventable, though exactly what could have been done to prevent this incident from happening, authorities saying that that answer may not come for several more months. Polo Sandoval, CNN, New York.
Joining me now from Youngstown, Ohio, to talk about the situation in East Palestine, Andrew Welton, a professor of civil engineering and environmental and ecological engineering at Purdue University. He's also the director of the Healthy Plumbing Consortium and leads the Center for Plumbing Safety. Sir, a very good day. I understand you're headed to the impacted area tomorrow. What do you know so far about the risks that residents face as a direct consequence of this accident?
Well, thanks for having me. I am headed in with the team at the request of community members and groups to help them understand the water, soil, and indoor air safety questions that they're facing in their homes.
Do you know more about how these chemicals are affecting the local environment?
Well, these chemicals are not designed to be moving around in the environment. So the toxic release on February 3rd was very significant. The fate of these chemicals in homes and property is also something we need to think about, and that's what we're here to solve.
Well, the fact that you're there at the request of residents, if I understand you correctly, I mean, how concerned are they about the way that testing is currently being done?
The initial response to the disaster by local, state, and federal officials was not optimum and resulted in a lot of misinformation and distrust. That distrust has resulted in many questions, and in some cases, people are just not believing the information that they're given anymore, partly because the data hasn't been completely transparent and shown to them. So I have some serious concerns, but that's why we're here to help.
Can you share some of the concerns that you have?
Yes, some of the concerns are the material that was created during the fires, the chemical fires, and that material deposited onto homes, into vegetable gardens, and elsewhere. And so nobody to date has characterized what that is, and nobody to date has been swabbing surfaces to understand, this particulate matter. What is it? What's it holding? What's it releasing? And so that's part of what we're looking at.
How quickly were residents informed about the dangers?
Well, the evacuation was conducted by local officials, and that was done basically to prevent people from being exposed to the toxic gas cloud that was created during the chemical fires. Looking forward, though, however, people were encouraged to come back to the community without appropriate testing, thorough testing that was done, and that was probably a misstep on behalf of the officials.
Now, from what I gather from your answers, you feel that local authorities were ill prepared for this type of incident.
Well, this was a very significant incident. As it turns out, vinyl chloride trains go through where I'm from, West Lafayette, Indiana. So these trains go through many places across the country, and officials likely haven't planned for this type of cascading disaster where a disaster compounds on a disaster. So this was a pretty significant event, but officials are learning from this now.
In terms of water testing, how would you go about determining that, for instance, water is safe enough for people to use?
Well, after all the disasters I've been to, you need to understand what exactly you're looking for. So you don't just run what's called a VOC test or an SVOC test, because there's hundreds of thousands of different compounds. And if you're not looking for the ones you need to look for, then it really doesn't matter if you're sampling. And so that's what we are here to do, is kind of start screening the water and other samples for what chemicals they should be looking for to kind of gut check the response.
Now, it's really quite scary situation for the people in the affected area. What is your advice to them? What can they do to keep their families safe?
Well, what I always advise people that reach out is that they need to take the best care of their friends and family. And so if there's an issue that they believe needs to be addressed, they need to tell somebody, and they need to tell their elected officials and the governor's office, because the governor is responsible for the safety and well-being of the people in Ohio. And they also have to encourage researchers and scientists to come in who will help them get answers to the questions that they want answered. And I think that can help move them forward in terms of understanding safety, but also help us plan for the next disaster as well.
Andrew Welton, thank you so much for joining us, sir, and good luck with your work.
Thank you.